Hey everyone, welcome back to the FYE Talks podcast. We're here today with Jaren Childers. She is a current peer mentor and student with the FYE program, and we're really excited that you could co-host today.
Thank you.
And we also have two super special guests that we're so excited to bring on the show to discuss their experiences and some of the current political issues that are going on related to the LGBTQ community. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
So I'm Nikki Ellis. I am a 1998 graduate of ECTC, and I have my own private practice here in town doing therapy, mental health.
My name is Chelsea Hawkins. I am a current ECTC student working on my associate in arts degree and hopefully graduate before 2022.
Fantastic. So it sounds like, Chelsea, you as a current student, you're going to be looking at it more from how things have been past 5-10 years, kind of as you've come through high school and middle school and things like that. And then Nikki is going to obviously give us a little bit of a further reaching history as to what this has looked like through your life.
That was gently put.
I do my best. I do my best. And so, like I said, we're super excited to have you guys on the show today.
Thank you.
And if you could just begin by kind of summing up what the LGBTQ community means to you. What does that look like for you? How do you draw strength from it? Just kind of putting that in perspective for people who may not know.
Being part of the LGBTQ plus community, it means a great deal to me. Not just as being part as an asexual lesbian, but even as a person. I've met many, many great and wonderful people within this community that, many people that I'm still currently friends with. So, it's an overall, for me, it's a positive community. I feel like I could be myself, and that's just not, and me being really socially awkward, it's kind of hard to find a community as great as this community, especially where you can be yourself and you can, find other people just like you that you can communicate with, relate with on many different levels.
And so it's a real sense of solidarity.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic.
I think for me, I totally agree with all of that, but I came into the community much later, it seems like, because here on campus, there wasn't much of a community when I was here. So it was, I think maybe 10 years ago when they started having serious pride events up in Louisville, and I would go up there and it was like home. You could be with people who, it was just all about love. Nobody cared who you were with. It was just a place where you could be accepted for whatever you brought to the table. So that's been a great thing to come into over the past maybe 15 or so years.
Fantastic. And so I was going to say, this is more of a recent development that people have really started gaining some traction with, pride being as huge as it is now. And so, Nikki, can you tell a little bit about what it was like, when you were growing up, how that experience was for you with not having quite the community that maybe, Chelsea, you grew up with?
So I grew up in Arizona, which the one saving grace for that is, we were about 10 hours away from California. So it was, I will go as far as saying moderately progressive at that time, but it was still very closeted. I finally decided it was time to come out when I was, I think, a sophomore in high school, and so that would have put that back in 1992. So a few years ago.
Just a few.
But it was rough. When my parents found out, it wasn't even something that I got to share with them. They found a note from my girlfriend at the time.
Really?
And it was one of those like telephone, telegraph, telegrandma, so my mom gets on the phone and she's talking to grandma and then she spreads it to the whole family.
Goodness.
So I really didn't have the opportunity to do that on my own. It was sort of forced. But then finally starting to get comfortable with that around the time I graduated from high school, then it was time to come to Kentucky. And all I kept thinking was, oh Lord, where are we moving to again? So it was a challenge. I think right after we moved here, I went through a pretty big bout of depression, and until I finally started here on campus, and that was helpful. I could be around peers, but there was nobody here that I knew who was any part of the community. So it was still very closeted.
And so do you feel that students who have a similar experience, where they're that chance to kind of bring it to their family themselves, when that's taken for them, how do you think that impacts people? How did that impact you?
I kind of felt robbed in a way. You know, I know that I come from a wonderful family. You know, I had a fantastic childhood. I have a fantastic external family. So I'm glad that it got to be shared with wonderful people. But at the same time, I got to see a side of my family that I really didn't want to have. And there were people who turned away. There were folks who wouldn't talk to me at gatherings, and, you know, heaven forbid, you know, the gay cooties,
Oh,
you know,
no.
like you sneeze and
Yeah.
it gets on them or something.
Everyone's like,
Yeah, it's like, oh, go shower, you know. And so, I mean, it was difficult, and I wish it had been different, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, it was kind of like it was handled for me.
yeah.
And it would have been a lot longer before I would have felt comfortable with coming out.
Gotcha.
So,
And so, Chelsea, can you shine some light on kind of what that was like growing up and maybe coming out and having to deal with those pressures and things like that, those expectations?
Well, I mean, I think I can kind of relate to Nikki's experience with coming out. I came out at right before 2010. I would want to say maybe 2009, and it wasn't really something that I got to do on my own terms. I was actually outed in front of in front of my entire seventh grade class.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so in a way, I do feel like I did get robbed of having that experience and having to tell the people that I was really close to that, like, hey, you know what? At the time I was bisexual. I'd be like, hey, I'm bisexual. Just so you know, I trust you, and I feel like you need to know this. But in a way, I mean, it was just a really terrible, terrible feeling. And especially because I wasn't really ready to come out at the time either. And by family-wise, though, pretty much the only people that in my family that actually accepted me for who I was my mom. And I wish it was totally different. My childhood wasn't the greatest. And mostly because of my stepdad, and then my biological dad was just absent my entire life, so that just made things 10 times worse. But I mean, I'm just thankful for my mom and my grandma. They just accepted me for who I was, and I guess that's all you can really ask for. But I mean, once I started here, and I became a little bit more comfortable with myself, I feel like it's gotten a little bit easier to come out to people that I know I can trust, especially with the FYE group. I feel like I could trust everybody in the group. And I feel like, I can tell them, hey, look, I'm part of this community. And I feel like you should know that. And, and it's great. But it certainly hasn't gotten any easier. I do know that.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing that portion of your story. I can't imagine that it's easy, but that does provide a lot of clarity and support for other people who might be going through similar situations. And so, Nikki, I don't know how much you can share as a professional background in this, but have you seen a lot of cases where people come in and they feel like they're not accepted by their families, or they're very weighed down by those pressures to kind of hide who they are, which would be exhausting?
well, it seems that as I've kind of unfolded in private practice life, I see a lot of, I hate to use this term, but middle-aged women who have now had kids, been married for many years, and are like, hey, I've done what I needed to do as far as social role, and that was not who I was. This
Wow.
is who I am. And So they're now experiencing it even later in life than what I did.
And I can't imagine that. I imagine that as a whole other layer.
It does. But as far as like the young people that I see, there's just so much more acceptance and community that kind of rallies around them to provide support that is refreshing for me to see, because I felt kind of lonesome when I was doing it. But I think, the times are definitely changing, which is good, but it's so painstakingly slow.
Yeah.
And I wish it could be faster, but it is what it is. So.
Definitely. And so, Chelsea, you're a recent grad, about 5 years or so ago.
2015.
We were both in high school around the same time. And so, Jaren, when did you graduate?
2018.
Fantastic. So,
Wow. I'm a
I know.
dinosaur. I'm like the T-Rex of the group,
it's amazing. 5 years. I don't know how you feel, Chelsea. I'm not cool anymore. Like, there was a distinct moment in time where people who were younger than me, like, I'm like, hey, man. And they're like, they don't even know
Not
me.
a
And I'm
thing.
like, I'm not old. Like, I am not. I was you not that long ago.
Right.
And it is so painful, but I digress. So, I mean, Jaren, could you maybe give us some insight, just being a recent high school grad and seeing the things that you saw and things, maybe direct the conversation a little more towards how that looks and some things that maybe you wish you'd known in high school, or maybe things that you wish you'd known so you could have spoken up, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So I had a really good high school experience. I felt like there were more resources for LGBTQ plus individuals. I'm a huge ally. I'm very supportive of the community. So one of the things that I really liked was certain teachers had safe spaces. I felt that all teachers should be inclusive despite their political views. However, there were some who were more supportive than others. So there would be tags or stickers on their door that says safe space, and then there would be a rainbow. So other than that, we had Spectrum, which I was a part of, and it was a really cool way to learn like appropriate language, like how to ask someone like, what pronouns do you prefer? I got to learn about people's experiences coming out, and I just felt like I was more educated and like I could talk about the matters as an ally and let people know, hey, what's wrong and like what's okay to say, how to ask questions more appropriately. So I think that there were resources, but there are never enough in my opinion, because you all are the minorities and there should be more things to be able to help you all and as a community, and just more support. Yeah, I was super involved in theater, so that's a great community. It's very, very diverse, not just with like ethnic background, but with sexual orientation and political views, and you get a great group. So I think that there was enough, but like I said, there should have been more.
And so, Chelsea, from you, having graduated, obviously a little bit before Jaren, and not quite when you graduated. What did you see in high school, or even in your K through 12 experience at all? Because I feel like that is a real turning point for a lot of people.
Right.
Just whatever it is you're struggling with. I feel like high school is where you either really struggle with it, or you decide to own it. That's just been my experience. What I've seen is like it either strengthens you or it becomes something that you really feel uncomfortable discussing, speaking about. So what resources, what did you wish there were? What was there? Was there anything?
Honestly, I mean, I may have been blind at the time, but I honestly didn't feel like there was any kind of resources available to, further educate myself on these matters. Mostly because I didn't feel safe in the first place, because when I was with my ex-girlfriend, we got threatened by the guidance counselor with suspension. And
Really?
yeah, and all we did was just like right before classes, we would sit in the freshman hallway, just sitting next to each other, cuddling, and then you have all these other, straight couples just making out, and then I was just like, okay, whatever. But I mean, during that time, I just wish there was more, more teachers and other people that were more accepting, and then did offer safe spaces. And I agree with Jaren on the fact that there should have been a lot more resources available, a lot more, safe spaces for, people to, feel safe at.
Definitely.
And honestly, I think Central Hardin could have done a lot more with that. Considering the amount of LGBTQ plus people there was at the time.
And so that's the thing. I feel like a lot of times it just comes from lack of education. And, I mean, I don't know how much involvement you have in K through 12 world now, Nikki, or higher education, but do you see these resources cropping up more either in the community or in these places? And, where do you see this needing to go?
Well, it just so happens that I kind of have my toes in multiple spots. My wife is a fifth grade teacher, so I know that I think that the teachers at even the K through 5, 6 level, I think they're more aware of things and are more kind of choosy about how they phrase things so that everyone feels included. My son is a middle schooler, and I don't know that there are any resources at his school. Haven't branched out into high school yet. I can't let my mind go there. I'm like, he's just going to be 13. So, but as far as, I've graduated from four different universities in Kentucky, and I think that there's always a need for education. There is never going to be enough because there will always be people who just don't understand. And I think that, having opportunities like this to come together and be like, hey, guess what, guys? We're people. We're human beings. We live lives. We pay taxes. We do all that fun stuff.
Right.
Like we're not living much different from anybody else. So I cannot emphasize the need for education and for those safe spaces. And because coming from a place where I was, you never knew what was safe. And you just it was kind of like trying to hit a piñata in the dark. I know it's kind of dramatic, but it's like you just never really knew where to go. And you toss yourself out there and be like, oh, that wasn't it. Back up, and you would be really reluctant to try to reach out to anybody else again.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think people appreciate how, especially in, more quote unquote serving communities like education and, social services and things like that. I mean, if you were the one person and you shut that down, there might not be another person, and you guys can attest to how that was, was there an experience where you put yourself out there and you felt like this is a good chance and then that was shut down for you? Because I feel like that is a universal experience. Most of the students I've talked to say, well, I was very reluctant to discuss it with you or with my peer mentor or anyone because the last time didn't go well. And that just breaks my heart to hear that.
Well, I mean, I didn't really I tried to avoid, for the longest time, to talk to anybody about that because, mostly just because of my family alone, that's what made me not want to talk about it. And
Gotcha.
I'm just like,
So
what?
that experience with, that coming out for
Yeah.
you was, that just kind of shut it off. You were done.
Yeah, and it's just like, I just felt like I just recloseted myself.
Right.
And and that it really put a damper on everything. Fell into a really bad depression, went through a whole suicidal phase, and it was just, it was just a bad time.
Thank you for sharing.
I think for me, I've had smaller experiences, but probably the biggest one for me was, being in this part of the country, what do people do? They go to church. And so I had been serving at my church for a long time. I was worship leader. It was great. I was with a great group of people, and we had decided that we were going to go to a worship conference and kind of learn some new tricks of the trade. And these were other women that I was very close to, that I'd known for many years. And we ended up in the car all riding to Ohio together, sharing secrets, so to speak. And so I was like, well, hey, this person who's living with me is not my roommate. We've been together for 10 years. And it's like, if you could hear screeching tires on the interstate, it was like, You know, everybody turns around and looks at me like, really? You don't say. And so we left and did that Friday, Saturday, came back Sunday, and by Wednesday, I had been fired from my position at my church.
Really?
I was told that homosexuals were not leadership material, and that by professing my lesbianism, that I was somehow leading people astray. So that was probably the biggest heartbreak of my life at that time, because I thought, well, if God can't love me, then nobody can.
And I don't think people, again, appreciate that what you're saying, though you are firm in that conviction, it's like, do you hear what you're saying to another person? And I can't imagine what that's like to know someone, to know these people and to have them turn like that.
Well,
I don't think people who haven't had that experience could ever fully understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
I think
no.
you were going to say something.
No, I was just agreeing, but I mean, I agree, like, people, like, when people, like, shut, another person down just, based on who they are, I don't think they realize, like, how much they're hurting that person. Like, they just don't realize, they're just totally blind to it. And I think that's what, the main thing that society needs to work on is, like, hey, these are people, these people are people too, they live just like the rest of us. So treat them like humans, it's not that hard.
Definitely.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what do you all want to say to individuals who don't support the LGBTQ plus community? Like, how can you encourage them to become more educated or to get a better understanding of what it's like for you all?
I think I'm going to have a very different perspective than what you might, so I'm going to let you go first.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I don't know how to answer that because I try to avoid those people as much as possible for my own sanity, my own sake. And I know that sounds pretty selfish of me, but that's just me looking at
That's
it
how
me.
you feel.
And why would you
But-
want to put yourself in those situations? I
Right.
mean, as a single person, it can be super uncomfortable, demoralizing, and oftentimes unsafe to
Yeah.
try and challenge people like that.
Yeah, especially in this political climate.
then
Not to
we're
bring
gonna
up
lose.
not to bring up politics or
boy.
anything, but I mean, it's just especially now in this climate, it's terrible for the LGBTQ plus community and also other communities as well. And it's like I guess the only thing I have to say to people, it's like if you don't agree with something, educate yourselves. There's, websites that you can look up. Just don't go by religion or anything like that because it's not, I'm not really religious myself, so I'm probably going to sound biased, but it's probably not true if you're going based off religion. But there's resources online that you can use to educate yourself. Use them. The internet's free. These websites are free. The information's free. Use it.
Yeah.
And I think
Google's there for a reason.
We live in an age where you can learn anything, including how to be a better person.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
And so I think that's a really great topic, Chelsea, and it's a topic that needs to be amplified, or at least a piece of knowledge that needs to be amplified. Is there are so many ways now that further back, you couldn't just Google, what is this? What does this look like? You couldn't watch vlogs of families and how they treat their children and things to undo those implicit biases that you have. But now you can. There's a lovely gay couple on YouTube that has been converting an RV to a tiny house, and on set, they're living my dream one, and it's so educational to just you can view into people's lives now to dispel anything that you don't feel. If you're curious, if you want to know, you can find the answer. So I think that's so valuable, Chelsea, that you mentioned that. You can learn today. Whereas and even if you're 60 years old, you can learn. You know.
And it doesn't really hurt to ask that person either. If you're curious,
Tactfully.
tactfully answer. Ask. What does it mean to be a lesbian? It's not that hard. And I don't know. It's just it's complicated.
And now we break for a program plug.
Hi, I'm Venus Cornett. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Health Clinic. I wanted to thank FYE for having me here. We provide lots of services. One thing I wanted to discuss was our women's health services. It's really important now because Lincoln Trail Health Department has lost their funding and is not able to offer this service anymore. And what this service includes is birth control, pap smears, breast exams, STD testing and treatment. The clinic is free for uninsured people within 300% of the federal poverty line. We offer health care, dental care, basic radiology, lab work, and medication assistance. This is, like I said, free for uninsured and within 300% of the federal poverty line. To see if you qualify, you can just give us a call at 270-763-9589. I think that's all.
It is, I would agree completely, and I think, while we're all saying education needs to be the thing, the people who need the education don't realize they need the education.
Right.
And that, I think, is one of the hardest things, is like, you don't know a lot of times when you're biased or when you're prejudiced.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I think a lot has to do with morals as well. Morals and beliefs and the way that, people were raised. Because, I mean, if you're raised to believe one thing, you're going to believe that probably for the rest of your entire life until you see otherwise. And, I mean, I think that also plays a major part, especially when it comes to religion, going back to religion. That's also a big thing, is is morals and beliefs and all that. And I guess you can say, I think that's another way, people, I'm trying to get my thoughts together.
It can be hard to explain to people why it's so important that they know.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess I've reached a place in my life where, and I can't use the word that my mom would use, but she reached the F at 50s. And so I think I hit those in my 40s. That I guess I just don't feel that there's a need for me to do all that anymore. I've done my educating. I've done my time trying to convince people that I'm a human being. And I'm tired.
Right.
So I live my life now. If you don't like my life or don't like how I live, that's fine. And I accept that viewpoint.
Right.
But I'm not going to chase after you. So I've made the conscious effort to remove those people from my life. I only have one life to live. So I want it to be surrounded by people who love me and love my family and aren't trying to make me be somebody different. So I absolutely still advocate and support and encourage, but as far as, feeling like I need to go out there and wave my flag and, I don't know that I do that so much anymore.
Well, and I can imagine it would be incredibly exhausting, just kind of preaching to the choir. And another thing is, I don't feel that it should be on you to educate other people. If you choose to share your story like you have done today to spread awareness and education, then that is beautiful and that is how we learn. But I feel like you always hear somebody say, well, what do you think as insert something, like you're again supposed to speak for that entire group. And it's like, I'm sorry, but the life Chelsea's leading and the life you're leading are completely different.
Right.
And so you can't adequately say, well, this is what it means to me. Now there are general human decencies, it's like, don't scream at somebody in Kroger, don't follow them to their car. I think some people could genuinely learn those things, which Google again. But just as far as explaining, you don't have to justify your existence. And I feel like so many young people get just covered up with the need to feel like they have to justify who they are and why they are living the way that they are. Did you feel that, Chelsea, that you had to justify your existence?
Yeah, and I still feel like I have to. And I think that's just more like what I know I don't have to justify myself to other people, but it's just like, I've been doing it for so long, why not stop now?
Well, it's hard to turn that off.
It's really hard, yeah.
I think that comes with age, you know, like,
I was going to say, what can you offer to that as well? You said that you've reached that, like, I'm done, I don't need to explain it to you, but do you still feel yourself wanting to kind of go to bat for younger people or just people that you see and you're like, hey,
absolutely.
man?
Yeah, absolutely. As, someone who has a practice here in E-Town, one of the things that I know that I can do is make sure that people who are seeking mental health services know that I'm, there for them and that I understand where they're coming from. As far as I know, I think I'm the only, LGBTQ friendly / living the life therapist here in town.
That's awesome.
So, and that's something I want people to know. I kind of feel like it's like putting the bat signal up in the sky,
Come
like,
to me. I will save you.
yeah, like, I'm here if you need me. And so, like, I want people to know that there are therapists who look like them and who understand how they're living and, that they don't have to try to convince whoever it is they're going to talk to that it's okay.
So do you see, and either one of you or both of you can probably give some light on this answer, do you see more representation in your communities and your media and things like that now? Are you able to see more people and, experience things with more people that are similar to you, live a similar lifestyle to you, something of that nature?
I see it a lot in media. I watch a lot of TV.
I think we all do,
and
especially
I was
now.
really happy to see more LGBTQ representation in media.
And you feel it's accurate? That's where
Considering
they
that-
get you.
Yeah, considering that straight white men are usually the ones that write these TV shows, that write the scripts, nah. It could really use a lot of work. But it's just, where we are in time right now, considering that we didn't have this type of representation, like not even 5 years ago, it's good to see. And it's improving, but it needs to, improve more.
And it can always, like you said, it could always be more accurate, it could be better, it could be more tasteful.
Yeah, and there's always room for growth as well. And I think that with younger kids, it's really good to have this kind of representation as well. Considering that, older people from older generations like Nikki, they didn't have this type of representation. I can't really say, I don't even know what kind of representation there was back then.
And so that is a good segue. Was
Yeah.
there any really? Do you remember seeing anyone you could relate to or have a hero or anything of that nature?
Not really. Trying to think back, it's been a little bit, but, it wasn't, the people that I consider heroes, were not, it had nothing to do with sexuality, it was, the way that they championed for everybody to have equal rights. They themselves may not have been part of the LGBTQ community, but, they cared about making sure that everyone was treated equally, especially, here recent with the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That is frightening to me. I know, I can't even go there. I'm going to start crying. Because it was the other night I was laying in bed after that and I thought, I wonder how long it is before my marriage doesn't count anymore. And
I wonder if people could ever understand that feeling.
it was frightening because then I rolled over and I'm like, hey, honey, so about this health insurance, the first thing I go to is I'm on my, my son and I are on my wife's health insurance. I don't have that as a private practice business owner. So what is that going to look like, depending on who they appoint? And, do I have to worry about my marriage not being valid, my rights as a spouse not being valid? I can't even really wrap my head around it.
And so that's a good segue to kind of go into some other questions. We had one dropped off from our people in the back. And so this question says, as a therapist, have you come across anyone exposed to conversion therapy? And then is this an issue in E-Town or are the surrounding counties that you're aware of?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen. I just don't know about it. I have had some folks, especially the older female population, who, said, that was part of the reason why I didn't come out when I was younger, like, because they were sending people off to be, reformed or, to have the gay prayed away, so to speak.
Oh, my goodness.
And I mean, how frightening is that?
It gives me chills thinking about it.
I mean, I just think it's absurd. Like, I can't even wrap my head around that. I remember, being in high school when I first came out, and my mom said the first thing out of her mouth was, "We're sending you to Christian school." And I'm thinking, what's that gonna do? Like,
It's who you are.
what? I'm like, okay, so cool. I'll get to learn about Jesus while I'm there, I just
There
didn't-
wasn't that like imminent threat, it was
Yeah.
like, what do you mean,
Yeah, and it was like, so that's supposed to cure this?
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
It
no.
really doesn't. And I mean, like, I don't know. I've never been threatened with getting sent to Christian school or an all-girls school or anything like that to pray.
Like, hey, and all girls.
I was gonna say,
that would've been
that seems like it would have been fantastic. I mean,
But I mean, like, I don't know how those work. So I mean, but from my watching a lot of television, I'm like, doesn't Christian schools do like have like a little conversion therapy type thing down
well,
in the
and I'm sure
basement?
it's not every single Christian school.
But I mean, I know
and
there's
the way
something
they
like
represent
that,
it
but-
is surely exaggerated, but I mean, it's a reality. And
Yeah.
I
It
think
is.
in media, that only gives you the exaggerated part. That
Right.
gives you the worst of the worst. And it's easy to, I feel like, and you can probably attest to this, I feel like it's so easy to take that and say, that doesn't happen. That can't be real.
Right.
It's kind of like when you watch a World War II documentary or something, I feel like you can only take in so much of that trauma before you just kind of are like, I can't, and
And yeah, and I think that that's what a lot of people did, instead of even broaching the subject of this is my life, it was they just shut down. They shut that part off because it wasn't safe to share it.
Right.
It just wasn't okay. And if you know that there's, conversion therapy and camps out there that can send you to, well, then I'm not going to say anything. I
Right.
why would I? It's frightening to me.
And I mean, the impact that would have on the rest of your life. I mean, obviously, we can only imagine what that would be like, and I could just see that completely changing, of course, who you are and who you will always be, and how that is going to just impact every aspect of your life, and I think it can be so difficult for people to understand that relationships and that part of your life where you get to share with somebody else is altered. You can never communicate that way, I feel like, effectively.
Right.
It would be very, very hard to be that same person where you would be like, this is who I was before and this is who I am after. You kind of just say, this is who I am now.
Well, in my, I'm working on my PhD, and in my research, I do a lot of stuff with shame and guilt. And just understanding, when people feel shame about who they are, that has life-altering, impacts. And leads to not just mental health issues, but physical health issues. So it's like, I think that's, for me, if I can help alleviate any sort of shame that people feel about who they are, then that's what I want to do. I just, because I've seen what that looks like in people, and it's no way to live. It's awful to be ashamed of who you are.
Well, at the very fundamental aspect, something that you know in yourself is who you are and is not going to change. And then
Right.
you're having somebody try and either force you or tell you or, pressure you or guilt you or shame you into it. I couldn't
Right.
imagine how that would upend a lot of confidence and, certainty you have about
Well,
yourself.
And then it's the core of who I am at my being is bad, is not okay. And so, how is anybody ever going to love me if who I am is bad?
Right.
And that just makes me get a little teary thinking about it. Like, I can't handle that.
And so reverting to the current political climate, which everyone loves to discuss, we're not going to dip into all of that, but just, do you see this going in a positive direction? I mean, do you see the wagon going up the hill towards accurate representation and, holistic healing and things of that nature? Do you see there being progress made, or do you feel confident in the direction that it's going?
Can you say hell no on here?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking just that. I was just sitting here
Do you need to
shaking my
beat
head.
that?
Yeah. With everything that's going on in this political climate, definitely not. I do not feel confident in the way that things are going right now. And even after the election, depending on who gets elected, I just don't see anything happening progressively or positively towards anything really. And I mean, I think that's just like my views, but I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I try to stay out of politics, but when it's affecting me and the people I care about, and then other people on top of that, that deserve to live the way they want to live, deserve to have a free life in a place that's supposed to be considered free. It's kind of hard to stay out of it.
Definitely.
But yeah.
And so where do you see it going, Nikki?
I think I would agree. I won't delve too far into my personal thoughts about our current administration, but just seeing, the way things have gone for immigrants to the country, the way that Blacks and people of color have been treated in this community, it makes it really hard for me to not generalize that down to the LGBTQ community. Like, how long is it before the divide is so great in this country that either we're back at another civil war, or we're looking at, heaven forbid, like Nazi Germany resuming. Maybe that's way out there in left field, but it's not that hard for me to get my mind to go there.
Yeah. And I mean, I totally agree. Like, I mean, probably saying that, how there's a saying that history repeats itself. I definitely think that's happening. With the concentration camps in Texas, with the immigrants, pretty much that's, you can say that's mass genocide, considering that they're putting like an entire race of people in cages like they did with the Jewish people and all, the people that the Nazis didn't consider, humans. I think that's happening.
Well, we
And
see a
I
lot
don't
of parallels
really-
in the
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
process.
definitely.
At the very minimum of it, we're seeing a lot of parallels between, reverting back to these people are not welcome or not people or not, and you see that in a lot of different groups, like you said, and how that's impacting people. And I think there's a lot of unrest. So
Right.
I think the most we can do is kind of hope that,
Hope that it gets better, even though it may not seem like it. I mean, hope is the only thing we got right now.
Right. And I think if we lose sight of that, then everything feels pointless. And I try to keep the best positive, outlook on things,
Right.
even when it's kind of dismal, because, I have a family and I have clients that are relying on me
Right.
to be hopeful.
definitely.
So there are some days where you put on the face and, the fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Awesome.
And so,
I mean, that's the only thing you can do.
Right,
I mean, I don't have anybody relying on me. Probably, I don't have a family of my own yet. I'm only 23, but I have to keep, that's just my personality, is to stay hopeful for other people that, that look up to me, I guess you could say. Because, I'm pretty sure there's people that do look up to me. So I do have, it's kind of like I feel like I have to keep that persona of, even though I don't feel that way, I had to keep it up for other people.
And
And
So,
when
like-
people look to you, that can be
Yeah.
a real source of support.
I was just gonna say, from my perspective, I look up to you. I know that may seem strange, but it's like I do because I feel like you and people your age are the future of this country.
Right.
And if I can't put my faith and trust in the young people, then I'm doomed. I like the direction that you guys are going, with the inclusivity and, just love and acceptance. I think that's huge. So I can only hope that the direction our country is going in, is
gonna
better than
follow
where we're
suit.
kind of at right now.
Right.
And so we're going to wrap this up. Just as a last little bit, words of encouragement. If there's a student or a community member or anybody else who is sitting at their computer right now and they're really struggling, what is one piece you can offer them that you hope will encourage them, inspire them, educate them?
Wow.
That's, yeah.
Tough
I
order,
mean,
but
I guess coming from my experience, I would say don't lose sight of who you are. If if you know who you are already, do not lose sight of that because it's who you are. I mean, only you know who you are, so don't lose sight of it and don't care what other people think if they don't, agree with the way you live.
I think also building on that is we need more genuine people in the world, the ones who are just unapologetically themselves,
Yeah.
and because that's what makes life colorful. So I would say, you don't have to put on the face, you don't have to be somebody that you're not, just stay true to who you are, find the people who love and support you and stay with them.
Right.
Find your people and stay with them.
Can I ask how people can get involved, or what can we do to be the change? Even allies, how can I get involved to help you all and to help better the community?
And that's so
where you all
important.
feel safe, to where you all feel supported, because that's really important to me.
I mean, there's a lot of different organizations that people who support us, the allies, can get involved with. The Trevor Project definitely being one.
Absolutely.
Because that organization is probably I've seen the most change come from them, and it's a really good organization to be a part of.
And just as a plug, stay tuned because we will be speaking with a member of the Trevor Project and speaking more about conversion therapy and things, so stay tuned. And so, do you have any resources? Sorry, I apologize for that. That was just kind of a plug. I wanted to get that out there because I think it is important to follow up these conversations and keep the ball rolling.
Well, and I think, just even things like this, doing a podcast, bringing people in to talk and share their experiences. I think word of mouth is usually the best resource. And so if people feel so inclined to kind of advertise that they're an ally, I think that helps them. People don't have to go, like I said, trying to hit the piñata in the
Right,
dark,
true.
finding the safe space. They know who's already safe. And I think that's a huge deal.
Definitely. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing so many personal experiences and words of wisdom and encouragement. I think that this is fantastic. I think that this is going to inspire a lot of young people, hopefully a
Hope
lot
so.
of older people, young people, whoever, to say you're not alone. People care about you. They care that you feel genuine and accepted. And we look forward to maybe having you guys back to do a little bit more discussing.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Thank
Love
you.
to.
So I'm Alexis Hutchinson. Again, we're here with the FYE Talks podcast.
I'm Jaren Childers.
Be staying tuned. You'll see more of Jaren in the future as well. We're really excited to provide you with another excellent FYE Talks episode. Stay tuned every Tuesday and Thursday at 1. You can find these episodes on our Facebook, the ECTC FYE. If you search that on Facebook, we'll come up and you can view this episode and past episodes if you're so inclined. Also, you can find it at ectcfye.tumblr.com. We post all of our content there as well. So lots of places you can check this out and stay involved. If you have any questions, comments, if you'd like to see another episode, or you have any ideas or would like to participate, you can always reach out to myself or Miss Jaren. We have our contact information listed, so thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.